Hello everyone. Welcome to the Lightning Ball channel. If you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, please do so and activate the notification bell. Your support fuels my continued efforts. In our previous episode, we saw Sokka successfully pass Testarossa's test and join her and Moss on their way to Velzard and Guy's battlefield. In this episode, we will witness Testarossa's formidable information-gathering abilities and the hidden power she wields, Nihilistic World. So, let's get started. With the aid of Moss's spatial motion magic, the group arrived at the very edge of Velzard's domain, the farthest boundary that her power could reach. Even for Moss, the strongest demon peer, it was impossible to teleport directly into the frozen wasteland that was beyond even visible perception. Of course, Moss understood this well. It was all within the plan. Moss quietly asked Sokka once more if she truly intended to proceed to this perilous battlefield ahead. For Moss and Testarossa, as demons, death was not the end. They could be revived given enough time. However, Sokka had no such luxury. More importantly, Rimuru-sama had once issued a direct order to his subordinates: do not die. In their current predicament, fulfilling that command had become a near impossible task. Both Testarossa and Moss were fully aware of the dangers ahead. They were about to confront beings at the absolute pinnacle of this world, Guy and Velzard. If they were caught in the crossfire, they could easily perish without even understanding what had happened. From this point forward, there was no room for carelessness. The landscape before them had been completely consumed by pure white. Velzard's frost had devoured everything, erasing all color and reducing existence to a singular, frigid stillness. However, this was actually advantageous for Testarossa. As primordial white, she embodied an absolute, merciless beauty, a cold and ruthless queen of pure white. While intelligence gathering was typically Moss's specialty, Testarossa was far from inferior. She usually delegated such tasks to Moss, but when she truly focused, her abilities alone were more than sufficient. Testarossa extended her consciousness into the frozen domain, instantly grasping all the information within it. Thanks to Scorched Dragon Velgrind's power, the destructive impact of this battlefield had been mitigated to the greatest extent possible. If Velgrynd had not intervened, the sheer aftermath of Guy and Velzard's battle would have caused unthinkable devastation to the land. Under such circumstances, the fact that the planet's axis had not yet shifted was entirely due to Velgrind's protection. Even so, not even Velgrynd possessed the ability to stop the battle between Guy and Velzard. There were only two beings in the world who could end this clash: Guy and Velzard themselves. At this moment, what preoccupied Testarossa the most was understanding Velzard's true objective. Carrera and Milim's subordinates had all been turned into ice sculptures. As we discussed in the previous episode, Testarossa understood that if Velzard truly intended to kill them, she wouldn't have gone through such unnecessary effort. Her actions seemed more like protection, yet this contradicted Feldway's purposes. Testarossa found it difficult to believe that Velzard was under Feldway's control, but she also knew better than to rely on subjective assumptions. Such a mistake could prove fatal. She needed to further analyze the situation. Yes, Testarossa was meticulous in her approach. Without confirming Velzard's level of control, she would not act rashly. To gain a more precise grasp of the battlefield, she adopted a top-down perspective, scanning the battlefield as if overlooking a grand tapestry. Her focus, naturally, was the ongoing battle between Velzard and Guy. For ordinary people, this battlefield was a realm they could not even approach. Even hero-class warriors would be unable to comprehend the sheer speed and intensity of this fight. But for Testarossa, it was as effortless as a casual stroll through a scenic landscape. On the battlefield, Velzard radiated a pale blue-white brilliance, nullifying Guy's relentless assaults. Encasing her body was a layer of exquisite, glittering frost, her diamond dust barrier. With every impact, its surface would ripple, momentarily forming patterns resembling dragon scales. This was Velzard's signature, impenetrable defensive skill, Snow Crystal. We had introduced this skill in our episode 86, where Michael utilized it in battle against Albera's army. Among Michael's defensive techniques, Snow Crystal was second only to Castle Guard. Guy's attacks were entirely blocked by snow crystal, leaving Testarossa momentarily stunned at the sheer strength of Velzard's defenses. Even Guy could not break through. But on second thought, she noted that Guy didn't seem to be fighting at full strength. The battle had already lasted for quite some time, yet both continued probing each other rather than committing fully. The reason was simple: these two knew each other too well. They were among the absolute pinnacles of existence, each fully aware that a single decisive opening could determine the outcome. Testarossa herself was no different. Unless she could identify a decisive escalation, the first one to become impatient would inevitably lose. According to the standard strategy of depleting the opponent's energy, prolonged attrition would favor Velzard. Her defensive capabilities were exceptionally efficient, whereas Guy appeared to be expending energy on seemingly futile attacks in an effort to shatter snow crystal. However, Testarossa knew Guy's personality. He must have had another plan. If he were merely stalling for time, that might be the optimal strategy, but he was undoubtedly considering the upcoming battle against Velgrynd. He could not afford to waste too much of his power here. If Velzard was fully focused on defense, then adopting a calculated, repeated attack strategy seemed logical. Yet there was one thing Testarossa could not comprehend: what would be Guy's breakthrough point? What is the key to victory? Deep in thought, Testarossa continued observing. But what next caught her attention was not the battle itself, it was Velzard's eyes. Despite the raging storm of fury emanating from her golden eyes never once wavered from Guy. They were locked onto him with an intensity beyond mere combat. The warmth they once carried was now absent. Her gaze reflected nothing but Guy. Testarossa could not decipher Velzard's true emotions, but she had completed her battlefield analysis, including pinpointing Carrera and the others' exact locations. She commanded Moss to continue protecting Sauka while cautiously advancing toward them. At the same time, she began preparing herself for battle. Moss, with a worried expression, cautiously asked Testarossa if she intended to assist Guy-sama. Testarossa shot him a cold glance, causing Moss to panic instantly, fearing he had said something wrong. However, Testarossa did not scold him as she normally would. Instead, she calmly stated that the battle had not yet begun, and that it was not her time to act. She further explained that forcing her way into the fight would only become a burden to Guy. Though Testarossa was undeniably powerful, in the presence of the divine-like forces wielded by Guy and Velzard, she was simply on a different plane of existence. She never even considered direct intervention. Her objective from the start had only been to protect Carrera and the others, as well as prevent Velzard from acting recklessly. At this stage, Testarossa had mostly confirmed that Velzard harbored no true killing intent. Moreover, the reality was that even with all her abilities, it would be impossible for her to interfere with Velzard's authority. As such, the rescue operation could be postponed. Thus, her second goal took priority. If she could find a way to restrain Velzard, the crisis on this battlefield would naturally resolve itself. Testarossa could not yet discern Velzard's true objective. Left with no other choice, she decided to invoke her hidden power. However, unlike what Moss feared, she would not resort to brute force. This battlefield was already covered in an immaculate and beautiful white, and yes, it was Testarossa's color. It was in this moment that Moss fully grasped Testarossa's intent, but at the same time, his face turned deathly pale in terror. Testarossa's unknown authority, Nihilistic World, was a power capable of manifesting the abyss of hell itself into the material world. It was a force that allowed her, and only her, to construct a domain of absolute extinction, a world where all life inevitably marched toward annihilation. Of course, this authority was not omnipotent. Its activation required several conditions, making it a difficult power to wield. Within the area where her white purity domain, Nihilistic World, manifested, the positive energy of life itself would directly interfere with the negative energy of the summoned void, causing mutual annihilation. In other words, any living being within the domain would be forcibly erased. If Testarossa expanded this power on a large scale, it would inevitably trigger a mass slaughter of all living creatures within its reach. Fortunately, the total energy of the void she could summon was directly proportional to her own strength. As a result, the range of her nihilistic world was naturally restricted, preventing uncontrolled devastation. However, all of this hinged on a single crucial factor: Testarossa had to maintain complete control over the void, preventing it from rampantly spreading beyond her control. It was precisely because this power harbored the potential to destroy entire worlds that Testarossa was so terrifying. That being said, effectively utilizing Nihilistic World in battle against powerful foes was no simple task. As previously mentioned, the void naturally counteracted living entities, meaning the more life forms present on the battlefield, the smaller the effective range of Nihilistic World. Given the limited total energy she could manifest, its scope would shrink significantly if too many targets were present. If Testarossa wished to engage a formidable opponent using this ability, she would need to minimize collateral energy loss from non-targets. However, Nihilistic World did not differentiate between friend and foe, making it extremely difficult to wield effectively. Even for someone as intelligent and tactical as Testarossa, she had never mastered this power before, until now. With the acquisition of her ultimate skill, Lord of the Underworld, Testarossa had finally attained perfect control over this extraordinarily dangerous authority. The synergy between these abilities exceeded all expectations, granting Testarossa an overwhelming advantage that left her opponents in utter despair. Moss, as the sub-king of the White faction, was one of the few who truly understood the terrifying potential of this ability. In the deepest abyss of hell, even high-tier spiritual lifeforms could not survive. This very nightmare realm, a domain of absolute obliteration, was the source of Testarossa's white purity domain, Nihilistic World. Incidentally, Ultima's signature dark magic, Nihilistic Banish, her only dark magic powerful enough to bypass the giant race's magic nullification, was merely an imitation of the principles behind this hellish abyss. From this comparison alone, one could imagine just how horrifying a large-scale ability of similar nature would be. If, by any chance, Testarossa lost control of Nihilistic World, the void would spill forth without end, devouring the very fabric of existence itself, expanding the hellish abyss infinitely, until the world collapsed. Moss fully understood this fact. With a mere flicker of Testarossa's will, inescapable death would descend upon everything. Moss himself would undoubtedly perish, let alone protecting Salka. In fact, Moss even feared that this ability might prevent even demons from resurrecting. He had never dared to test this theory, nor did he ever wish to. As such, he could not be certain of its full consequences. However, upon further reflection, Moss began to suspect that the situation might not be so absolute. Nihilistic World, while terrifying, was not invincible. Not only was it exceptionally difficult to activate, even if successfully invoked, it might not be powerful enough to threaten opponents far beyond Testarossa's level. If she were facing Carrera or Ultima, who were close in strength to her, Moss had no doubt that the outcome would be decided swiftly. However, against a foe of true dragon caliber, eradicating such a vast energy presence would undoubtedly be an immense challenge. Furthermore, there was Gi, the strongest of the 7 primordial demons, present on this battlefield. Moss speculated that if Testarossa's opponent were only Gi, she might have a sliver of a chance to win. However, the reality was far harsher. Her adversaries were both Gi and Velzard. Under these circumstances, the effectiveness of Nihilistic World remained entirely uncertain. Therefore, considering Testarossa's typically cautious nature, theoretically, she should not have activated an ability as extreme as Nihilistic World at this moment. It was only now that Moss finally realized his initial assumptions might have been flawed from the start. While he had already dispersed his clones across the battlefield to gather intelligence, and had been sharing the information with Testarossa, he had not detected anything particularly unusual. However, perhaps he had overlooked something critical. If there was another presence on this battlefield, one that Nihilistic World would indiscriminately erase, then Testarossa must have sensed it. The frozen life forms on the battlefield had already been completely immobilized by Velzard's authority, meaning they would remain unaffected. Likewise, Gi and Velzard, being supreme beings, would experience limited interference from this power. That meant only one thing: there was someone else here. Moss's shock was immeasurable. Testarossa had detected an unidentified presence. At that very moment, Testarossa ordered Moss to heighten his vigilance. She had already realized that Moss had figured out the truth, and once again, he had passed her test. Moss could sense a hint of satisfaction in Testarossa's voice, and he let out a huge sigh of relief. The world around them was soon swallowed by an even denser wave of pure white. And then, with a playful, teasing voice, a stunningly beautiful woman with azure hair appeared at Testarossa's side. It was none other than Velgrind's parallel existence, left here to observe the battlefield. Velgrynd had sensed the shift in Testarossa's actions and commented on her decisiveness. Testarossa, however, remained composed, simply stating that she was investigating whether this chaos truly aligned with Velzard-sama's intentions. Velgrynd found this amusing and remarked that unleashing a power capable of world destruction just to confirm a theory was rather reckless, though, in a way, impressive. Two stunning figures now stood together, calmly conversing amidst the chaos, forming an undeniably striking scene. Yet, for Moss, who was currently trapped within Nihilistic World, the experience was nothing short of sheer terror. He was struggling to maintain his protective barrier, barely holding on, while internally cursing his superior. He had endured countless hardships, but this situation was on an entirely different level. Moss, despite being in existence second only to primordial demons, constantly found himself in these predicaments. He was growing increasingly convinced that his true title should be the one who always gets sacrificed. He longed to vent his frustration, to curse this absurdity aloud, but he knew all too well that if he actually voiced his thoughts, he would not survive the consequences. Still, Moss believed that thinking complaints was surely permissible. Meanwhile, Salka, nestled within Moss's protective barrier, was overwhelmed with guilt. She repeatedly apologized to Moss while expressing her gratitude. Yet, at this point, Salka could no longer keep up with the rapid succession of events. Moss totally understood her confusion. After all, the entire area was now completely engulfed in Velzard's power, surrounded by an intense blizzard infused with dense magicules. For ordinary beings, stepping foot into this storm meant instant death. Even A-rank warriors stood no chance of surviving in this outer perimeter, let alone approaching the heart of the battlefield. Moreover, within this raging storm, visibility was zero. Sound was entirely drowned out. Even magic perception was rendered useless. At this moment, the only things Salka could perceive were the overwhelming presence of Testarossa and the newly arrived Velgrynd. And that was all she could grasp. Moss assured Salka no need to feel guilty. As long as she survived, Moss's objective would be fulfilled. However, Salka could not shake the overwhelming sense of her own powerlessness. Compared to Moss, her strength was negligible, a difference so vast it was almost laughable. Yet, despite this insurmountable gap, Moss found himself in the same helpless position as Salka. This was not merely a matter of pride or humiliation, rather, it was a stark and undeniable reminder of the immense power gap between himself and his superior, Testarossa. Moss admitted that both his life and Salka's now rested entirely in Testarossa-sama's hands. A single thought from her could bring their existence to an end, without even the luxury of reincarnation. If she willed it, they would not simply die but be entirely erased by the abyssal void of Nihilistic World. However, Moss also noted that they were still within the first stage of Nihilistic World. Until Testarossa fully unleashed the void, they could still hold on to life. The first stage merely set the battlefield into attack standby. The true devastation would only begin in the second phase. Moss chose not to elaborate further. Salka's sole purpose was to remain where she was. Any additional burdens Moss would handle himself. Yet none of this was within Salka's realm of comprehension. The necessity of using such a dangerous ability was beyond her understanding. However, she also realized that the less she knew, the better. Knowledge would only bring greater fear. Still, one thing had become clear to her: her presence in this place was not meaningless. It was precisely because she was here that reinforcements had a reference point in this soundless, sightless white abyss. Without her, it would be nearly impossible to conduct a safe teleportation into this frozen battlefield. Even a Monster Federation executive-level combatant could not guarantee their arrival without a fixed location. And Moss's words had been true, Salka only needed to stay alive. With that in mind, Salka cast aside her self-doubt. Amidst this bleak, suffocating whiteness, Moss and Salka endured with great difficulty, while Velgrynd and Testarossa, unaffected by the oppressive atmosphere, continued their conversation as if nothing had happened. Testarossa sought to extract more information from Velgrynd regarding the unknown force lurking in the shadows. However, Velgrynd revealed that she, too, had appeared here precisely because she wished to uncover the identity of this hidden entity. This mysterious presence veiled the battlefield in an even deeper shroud of uncertainty. Alright, that's all for this video. In this episode, one crucial point was confirmed. Testarossa's information-gathering ability far exceeded that of Moss. At the very least, she had been able to detect the mysterious force concealed within the battlefield, something even Moss had failed to perceive. Naturally, Velgrynd had also sensed this presence, and in the next episode, Guy would as well. Additionally, it was established that if Testarossa fully unleashed Nihilistic World, she could overpower both Carrera and Ultima. It was important to clarify that this void was fundamentally different from Rimura's imaginary collapse or imaginary supply. In a previous Slime Wiki episode, it was mentioned that primordial blue rain had once recklessly challenged Testarossa, back when Testarossa had not yet evolved into a demon peer. However, Rain had been utterly defeated and forced to flee in disgrace, an incident that had even alarmed Diablo, prompting him to coordinate with Guy to ensure Ultima and Carrera worked together to keep Testarossa occupied within the Netherworld. At the time, Testarossa had clearly been the strongest among the three primordial demon beauties. However, in later volumes, Carrera received significant narrative focus, with notable combat growth showcased throughout. With this episode, the author once again reaffirmed that, as of now, Testarossa still maintained her superiority over the other two primordial demon beauties. In our next episode, Primordial Blue Rain and Primordial Green Misery will officially enter the battlefield, and Moss and Rain will finally acknowledge each other's strength, making the upcoming story just as thrilling. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support is greatly appreciated. See you in the next one.